ప్రారంభిస్తాను. మొత్తం ఈ పౌర హక్కులకు సంబంధించినటువంటి అన్ని అంశాల మీద ఆయన వర్క్ చేశారు. సుదీర్ఘకాలం ఆయన అడ్వకేట్గా కేసులు వాదించాడు. అనేక కేసుల్ని ఆయన పరిష్కరించాడు. తర్వాత ఆయన జడ్జిగా అయిన తర్వాత, హైకోర్టు జడ్జిగా అయిన తర్వాత మొత్తం 96,000 కేసుల్ని ఆయన పరిష్కరించారు. ఇది ఎక్కడ మన హైకోర్టులో ఎక్కడ కూడా ఈ సంఖ్య కనపడదు. ఈ 96,000 కేసుల్లో కూడా అధికమైనటువంటి కేసులు చాలా పేదలకు సంబంధించినటువంటివి. అండర్ పవర్స్మెంట్ ఉన్నటువంటి వాళ్ళకి ఆయన ఈ కేసులన్నీ పరిష్కరించి పెద్ద రిలీఫ్ కలుగజేశారు. సో ఆ విధంగా ఆయన ఇదివరకు కూడా చాలా ఆయన గురించి చాలా మందికి తెలుసు. గతంలో కూడా ఇక్కడ అనేక సభలకు సమావేశాలకు వచ్చారు. నవ తెలంగాణ ఒక వార్షికోత్సవానికి కూడా వచ్చారు. కానీ ఇప్పుడు జై భీమ్ తర్వాత ఆయన్ని దేశవ్యాప్తంగా అనేక చోట్లకు వచ్చి మాట్లాడాల్సిందిగా కోరుతున్నారు. సో అటువంటి వ్యక్తి ఈరోజు మన ముందున్నారు. ఈరోజు మనం అనుకున్నటువంటి సబ్జెక్టు భంగా విధ్వంసం అవుతున్నటువంటి ప్రజాస్వామిక వ్యవస్థలు, సంస్థలు, వ్యవస్థలు అనేటువంటిది సబ్జెక్ట్ అనుకున్నాము. దానికి పరిష్కార మార్గాలు ఏమిటి అని, డిస్ట్రాయింగ్ డెమోక్రటిక్ ఫౌండేషన్స్ అండ్ వే అవుట్, దీన్ని ఇంగ్లీష్లో చెప్పాల్సి వస్తే ఆయన ఇంగ్లీష్లో మాట్లాడతారు. దాన్ని కామ్రేడ్ వీరయ్య గారు, కె వీరయ్య గారు, కొండూరు వీరయ్య గారు దాన్ని తెలుగులోకి అనువదించి చెప్తారు. వీరయ్య గారిని కూడా వేదిక మీదకి రావాల్సిందిగా కోరుతున్నాను. సుందరయ్య విజ్ఞాన కేంద్రంతో పాటు అనేకమైనటువంటి ప్రజా సంఘాలు ఆయనకి ఆహ్వానం తెలుపుతున్నాయి. ఆ ప్రజా సంఘాల పేర్లన్నీ కూడా మీరు అక్కడ గమనించవచ్చు. ఐద్వా, డివైఎఫ్ఐ, కేవీపీఎస్, అదేవిధంగా ప్రత్యేకంగా ఫోరం ఫర్ రైట్ టు ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ యాక్ట్, ఇటువంటి పీపుల్స్ ఫోరం ఫర్ రైట్ టు ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ యాక్ట్, ఇటువంటి అనేక సంస్థలు ఆయనకి ఆహ్వానం తెలుపుతున్నటువంటి వాటిలో ఉన్నాయి. ఇటీవల కాలంలో మనం చూస్తున్నాము మన పార్లమెంటు ఏ విధంగా మారింది అనేటువంటి. ప్రజాస్వామ్యానికి ఒక గొప్ప పునాది లాంటిది పార్లమెంట్. ఆ పార్లమెంట్ని ఆషామాషిగా మార్చేశారు. మొన్న అగ్రికల్చర్ లేబర్స్ అంటే ఏడాది క్రితం ప్రవేశపెట్టినటువంటి అగ్రికల్చర్ లేబర్ బిల్స్ని సరైనటువంటి చర్చ లేకుండానే వాటిని ఆమోదించినటువంటి చూసాము. ఆ బిల్లు విత్డ్రా చేసుకున్న సందర్భంగా కూడా ఎటువంటి చర్చ లేకుండా, చర్చకు అవకాశం ఇవ్వకుండా ప్రభుత్వం వాటిని విత్డ్రా చేసేసుకుంది. ఇది ప్రజాస్వామ్యంతో, పార్లమెంట్లో ప్రజాస్వామ్యాన్ని పరిహసించడమే. ఇప్పుడు మహిళల పెళ్లి వయస్సు 21 ఏళ్లకు పెంచాలని కేంద్ర ప్రభుత్వం నిర్ణయించింది. ఈ సమావేశాల్లోనే దాన్ని పాస్ చేయాలనుకున్నారు. సమావేశాలకు ఇంకా 3 రోజులు మాత్రమే గడువుంది. ఇప్పటి వరకు ఆ బిల్లును సభ్యులకు అందజేయలేదు, పార్లమెంట్లో దాన్ని ప్రవేశపెట్టలేదు. అంటే దాని అర్థం ఏంటంటే ఈరోజు ఇచ్చి రేపు దాని మీద చర్చ జరపవచ్చు, లేదా ఉదయం ఇచ్చి సాయంత్రం చర్చకు రమ్మని చెప్పవచ్చు. ఆ చర్చ ఎట్లా జరుగుతుంది అనేటువంటిది మనకు అంత షార్ట్ నోటీస్లో జరిగేటువంటి చర్చ ఏ విధంగా కూడా పరిపూర్ణమైనటువంటి చర్చ ఉండదు. అంతకంటే ఘోరమైనటువంటి విషయం ఏంటంటే ఇటీవల ఒక పిఎంఓ అధికారి ఎలక్షన్ కమిషనర్లను తన ఆఫీస్కి పిలుచుకొని మాట్లాడాడు. కమిషనర్లు ఏమో ఆయన ఆఫీస్కి వెళ్ళారు, చీఫ్ ఎలక్షన్ కమిషనర్ ఏమో వర్చువల్గా ఆ సమావేశంలో పాల్గొన్నారు. ఇది ఎప్పుడు చరిత్రలో జరగలేదు. ఎలక్షన్ కమిషన్ మీద కూడా తమ పెత్తనం చెలాయించడం అనేటువంటిది చర్చలో ఎప్పుడు చరిత్రలో లేదు. ఎందుకంటే ఎలక్షన్ కమిషన్ ఒక ఇండిపెండెంట్గా పనిచేయాల్సినటువంటి సంస్థ. అటువంటి సంస్థను కూడా ప్రధానమంత్రి కార్యాలయం ఆదేశాలు జారీ చేసేటువంటి పని అయితే ఇంకా ప్రజాస్వామ్యానికి పునాదులు అనేటువంటివి భంగపడటమే కదా, వాటిని భంగపరచటమే కదా. ఇదే విధంగా మనకు ఎలక్షన్ బాండ్స్ చూసాము. ఏ విధమైనటువంటి వివరాలు, ఎవరు ఏ పార్టీకి ఎంత డబ్బు ఇస్తున్నారో తెలుసుకోలేని విధంగా ఎలక్షన్ బాండ్స్ని ప్రవేశపెట్టారు. ఇది కూడా అప్రజాస్వామికంగా పార్లమెంట్లో పాస్ చేయించుకున్నారు. పిఎం కేర్స్ కూడా అటువంటిదే. ఇట్లా చెప్పుకుంటూ పోతే అనేకమైనటువంటి అంశాలు. తర్వాత నిన్న అఖిలేష్ ఒక ప్రకటన చేశాడు యూపీలో. అక్కడ ఈ యూపీలో సమాజ్వాదీ పార్టీ లీడర్స్ మీద ఐటీ దాడులు, ఈడీ దాడులు ప్రారంభించారు. ఈ విధంగా తనకు వ్యతిరేకంగా ఉండేటువంటి వాళ్ళ మీద ఐటీ దాడులు చేయడం, ఈడీని ఉపయోగించుకోవటం, అంటే ఎన్ఫోర్స్మెంట్ డైరెక్ట్ను ఉపయోగించుకోవటం, ఇన్కమ్ ట్యాక్స్ డిపార్ట్మెంట్ ఉపయోగించుకోవటం, ఇవన్నీ కూడా చాలా అప్రజాస్వామికమైనటువంటి కార్యక్రమాలు ఈరోజు జరుగుతున్నాయి. సో అటువంటి అంశాల మీద చంద్రు గారిని మాట్లాడాల్సిందిగా కోరాము. వారు వెంటనే అంగీకరించారు. నిన్న వచ్చారు వారు. 3 మీటింగ్లు మాట్లాడారు. ఒకటి ఫ్రీ సాఫ్ట్వేర్ వాళ్ళదే, అదేవిధంగా ఉస్మానియా యూనివర్సిటీలో మాట్లాడారు. నిన్న సాయంత్రం సెంట్రల్ యూనివర్సిటీలో కూడా మాట్లాడారు. ఈరోజు మనకు టైం ఇచ్చారు. ఈరోజు ఇక్కడ ఆయన ప్రసంగం చేస్తారు. ప్రసంగం తర్వాత మీరు ఏమైనా ప్రశ్నలు ఉంటే అడగవచ్చు, లేదా రాసి పంపవచ్చు. వాటికి ఆయన జవాబులు కూడా చెప్తారు. ఇప్పుడు నేను మైక్ని సభ అధ్యక్షుడు సాంబరెడ్డి గారికి ఇస్తున్నారు. వారిని సభ నిర్వహించవలసిందిగా కోరుతున్నారు.
ఈరోజు ఉపన్యసించడానికి వచ్చినటువంటి వినయ్ గారు చెప్పినట్టుగా జై భీమ్ రియల్ హీరో జస్టిస్ చంద్రు గారికి, అలాగే సుందరయ్య మేనేజింగ్ కమిటీ కార్యదర్శి వినయ్ కుమార్ గారు, మా సహచరుడు కొండూరు వీరయ్య గారు, మేమిద్దరం కలిసి చాలా వాటిల్లో పనిచేసాము. సహచరుడు సభకు ఇచ్చేసినటువంటి మిత్రులందరికీ కూడా నమస్కారం. ఈరోజు సందర్భం మీకు తెలుసు. ఆ సందర్భాన్ని గురించి వినయ్ కుమార్ గారు ఇప్పటికే చెప్పారు చాలా వరకు. అసలు చెప్పాల్సింది మన జస్టిస్ చంద్రు గారు కాబట్టి మధ్య ఇంకా నేను ఫర్దర్ ఇంట్రడక్షన్ ఏమీ అవసరం లేదనుకుంటాను టాపిక్ సంబంధించినంత వరకు. కానీ 2 మాటలు. ఈ ప్రభుత్వం, మోడీ ప్రభుత్వం మన దేశాన్ని మళ్ళీ మధ్యయుగాలకు తీసుకెళ్తుంది. అక్కడి నుంచి మళ్ళీ మనం ఈ దేశాన్ని బయటికి తీసుకురావాలంటే మొత్తం ఐరోపా ఖండానికి ఎన్లైటైన్మెంట్ ఎంత దోహదం చేసిందో, ఫ్రెంచ్ విప్లవం ఎంత దోహదం చేసిందో, ప్యారిస్ కమ్యూన్ ఎంత దోహదం చేసిందో మొత్తం ప్రపంచ ప్రజానీకాన్ని ఎన్లైటైన్ చేయడానికి. బోల్షెవిక్ విప్లవం రష్యాలో ఎంత ఇది చేసిందో, పీపుల్స్ చైనాలో ప్రజాతంత్ర విప్లవం ఎంత ప్రపంచం మీద ప్రభావం కలుగు చేసిందో, వీటన్నిటికీ మూలం ఒకటి మోడర్నిటీ. రకరకాల ఇది ఉండొచ్చు. సమానత్వం కొరకు, ప్రజాస్వామ్యం కొరకు, దానికి పునాది సమానత్వం. ఆ సమానత్వం అనేది లేకుండా పోతుంది. మనం 2000 సంవత్సరాలు అసమానత్వంలో బతికాము. అది కుల వ్యవస్థ కానివ్వండి, అది వర్ణ వ్యవస్థ కానివ్వండి, అది ఆర్థిక వ్యవస్థ కానివ్వండి, ఏ వ్యవస్థ అయినా మీరు తీసుకోండి, ఎక్కడా సమానత్వం లేదు. అలాంటిది స్వాతంత్రోద్యమంలో కొంత ఆ ఎన్లైటైన్మెంట్ నుంచి నేర్చుకొని, ఫ్రెంచ్ విప్లవాన్ని గురించి నేర్చుకొని ప్రజాస్వామ్యాన్ని తెచ్చుకున్నాం. డాక్టర్ అంబేద్కర్ మనకు ప్రజాతంత్ర రాజ్యాంగాన్ని ప్రసాదించాడు. ఇప్పుడు మొత్తం దాన్ని ధ్వంసం చేస్తున్నారు. ఎక్కడైనా ప్రపంచంలో మీరు విన్నారా ఒక మొత్తం రాష్ట్రాన్ని జైల్లో పెట్టడం అనేది? కాశ్మీర్ మొత్తం జైల్లోనే ఉంది 2 సంవత్సరాల నుంచి. మొత్తం ఈశాన్య భారతం అంతా కూడా సైనిక పాలనలోనే ఉంది. మొన్ననే ఎలాంటి ఇది లేకుండా 14 మందిని పిట్టలు కాల్చిపారు. అలాంటి ఆటవిక రాజ్యంలో మనం బతుకున్నాం. మధ్యయుగాల పరిస్థితులకు మనం మళ్ళీ వెళ్ళిపోతున్నాం. మోడీ అక్కడ తీసుకెళ్తున్నాడు దాన్ని. అది మళ్ళీ తిరిగి ఈ దేశాన్ని ముందుకు తీసుకురావాలంటే జస్టిస్ చంద్రు లాంటి వాళ్ళు ఎంతమంది కావాలో, పుచ్చలపల్లి సుందరయ్య లాంటి వాళ్ళు ఎంతమంది కావాలో, ఎన్ని వేల లక్షల ఎర్ర జెండాలు ఈ దేశానికి అవసరమో అనేది నిజంగానే ఊహించుకుంటే చాలా ఇదిగా ఉంది. ఈ మాటలతో నేను జస్టిస్ చంద్రు గారిని తన ఉపన్యాసాన్ని ప్రారంభించాల్సిందిగా కోరుతున్నాను. ఐ రిక్వెస్ట్ జస్టిస్ చంద్రు టు ప్లీజ్ డెలివర్ యువర్ వాల్యుబుల్ లెక్చర్.
Jai Bhim film, which brought me more closer to the fighting people of all over India. From Kashmir to Kanyakumari, I have been traveling to many places. The Jai Bhim film is my new identity card. Wherever I go, this becomes an identity. If one film can make such an impact, then we can take many more films to make people to be aware. It is not so simple that films cannot change society. Films can be made to in such a way it can make the reaction from the people more. It can show light on the plight of the people. In fact, comrade said, I am the real hero. In this film, there are several heroes and heroines. The heroine is Sengeni. So she is acting in this film by an actress, Biju Limo Jose. The real hero was the tribal woman who fought against the police. When the police offered her 100,000 rupees as bribe, she refused to receive. She said, ask my lawyer. He was making only 100 rupees a month, and 1,000 times bribe was given, and she could withstand that pressure. They are the real heroes. In this country of 130 crore people, the real heroes are the ordinary people who are deprived of the basic necessities, but still fighting for justice, fighting for liberation, fighting for a social change. They are the real heroes. There are many heroes in this film. It is not just a lawyer. The lawyer is only an instrument. He brought the case to the court and he argued the case. Maybe he's a different lawyer, he did not charge fees. That lawyer learned his lessons from the left movement, from the student movement, from the working class movement. My education in human rights was not through colleges and schools. It was through the streets. I learned my law in the streets of Tamil Nadu, where the working class taught me what is the law, what is the society, what is the relationship between the society and the individual, and what role an individual can play. More than anybody else, this case was held by one Misra, Justice P.S. Misra from Patna, who also became later, he was transferred from Patna to Tamil Nadu, and later he came to Andhra Pradesh as the Chief Justice. And I could see before 1990, there are many judges in Madras High Court, very scholars, illustrious judges who had big names. When Justice Misra came to Tamil Nadu, became a judge of the Madras High Court in 1990. There were judges before in Madras. They were all there. They are also scholars and they are also know the law. But they did not see the same way in which Misra saw the police repression in the state. It was Justice Misra. Many people ask me that was this incident unique? I said it is not unique. There were before many such incidents of torture and lockups, encounter death, third degree methods adopted against political opponents, and many people went missing due to police action. All this has happened. In fact, in 1987, I came to Hyderabad, and along with the APCLC office bearers, led by Dr. Balagopal, we met the then Chief Minister, N.T. Ramarao. We gave a petition that there were 87 encounter deaths in Andhra Pradesh at that time. We gave a list of those people and the actions initiated by police against those people and the government's response in those cases. And N.T. Ramarao Garu just saw the petition and said, yes, I will see. like anybody else would have said, I will see what he saw, we did not know. But the encounter that did not stop. It continued. And therefore, the case of JBM is not the first case and it is not going to be the last case. But there are individuals who also make changes. And what did Justice Misra do? In 1990, one Padmini from Chidambaram, a town in central Tamil Nadu, she was raped in a police station. Her husband was killed in the lockup. And later police said he died by hanging, suicide. She did not accept this. She did not think she should give up against the mighty police. With the help of the left parties, she came to court, filed a case against the death of her husband. She said, it is not a case of suicide. Police killed him and they also ravished me. Case came before Justice Misra. He immediately found this theory of suicide was very false because on the look of it, the lockup is only 4.5 feet and nobody can hang in a 4.5 feet wall. He said it's a false story. I will not believe. I will appoint a special investigation team and find out the cause of death. He appointed Latika Saran, who was the superintendent of police at that time. Later, she became the DGP of Tamil Nadu. And she found out that it was police who killed that man and also raped this woman. And what did Misra do? He gave compensation to Padmini. He found that compensation amount will be spent in no time. Therefore, he said to rehabilitate this lady who lost her husband and was raped by the policeman, he also said government should give him employment. And she is in government service today, thanks to Justice Misra. No criminal procedure court, no precedent that a person whose offense committed against a victim should be rehabilitated. Today, CRPC has got a provision for rehabilitating victims. But at that time in 1990, Misra, as a judge like anybody else, said that this woman should be rehabilitated and the state government should give her a job. And this is how he turned the face of the judiciary in Tamil Nadu. And that is how, when Sengeni's case came before him, we were fortunate it came before a man who will also see the reason, who will see beyond the court records, who knows the actions of the police, who knows how to investigate and find out the truth. That is how Jai Bhim became a victim story to a victory story. When Justice Misra, who was hearing this case, found that Sengeni's husband Raja Kannu did not go missing. On the other hand, he was killed by the police. He ordered a special investigation. Again, like Padmini's case. He said, we were asking for a CBI inquiry. He said, no CBI inquiry. There are a number of police officers. Find one good person. We will appoint him. So we were able to suggest the name of Perumal Sami, whose name is also mentioned in the film. He was holding the rank of IG. So he appointed IG as a special investigation team and then asked him to submit a report within 30 days. In the case of Parvati, that the Sengeni's original name, she was given 2.5 lakh rupees. At that time, we told Justice Misra, they belong to a tribal group. They have no fixed place to stay. They have no hut to live in this village. The judge asked me, what do you want? I said, you should be given a place to stay in the village. You should be given a house site for this lady. Then people may respect. If you belong to the village owns you. If you don't belong to the village, nobody cares for you. When Raja Kannu was taken to police station, tortured for 3 days, nobody in the village questioned. Nobody ever went to the station. If it happened to any other community, that community leaders would have gone. Some human rights activists would have gone. But when it happened to a tribal family, nobody was there because they do not belong to the village. They have no stake in the village. So I told them, if you want to create a stake for them, please give them a house site. So in the order, he said that this lady will be given a house site by the district collector in a prominent place in the village. This was the first time a court in India gave a tribal woman who was victimized by the police
whose husband was killed by the police, a house site in a prominent place in the village. Which judge would have ever said all this in a court order? That too in a habeas corpus case. When the law is very silent, when the law did not specify how the victim should be rehabilitated, here is a judge who gave a house site for that lady. And then when this film was taken, I thought it is proper for me to go and thank Justice Misra. But he is no more. After retirement, when he was in Andhra Pradesh, he continued good work. Even in Madras, after this case, he has given a number of judgments relating to many criminal action by the police. And therefore, once upon a time, the police had a demonstration against the judge, saying that he should not hear any case dealing with the policeman. They went and gave a petition to the Chief Justice that he should be removed from the criminal cases list. Then we in the bar had a counter demonstration against the police, saying their conduct is a misconduct. They are committing contempt of court, and Justice Misra, like any other judge, is bound to defend human rights because he is also enforcing the Constitution, wherein right to liberty is part of Article 21. So Misra continued till 1997 and came to Andhra Pradesh. In Andhra Pradesh, we continued the same work. In fact, Mr. K.G. Kannabiran, a senior advocate and a PUCA leader, has written to me several letters and told me that because of Misra, many of these encounter deaths we were able to get good orders from court. And then when he was a Chief Justice and a senior most judge in India, he was not promoted to Supreme Court. His number 2 became a Supreme Court judge. Mr. Misra resigned his post and continued to practice as a lawyer in Supreme Court, very successful lawyer. He had 25 juniors in Supreme Court. And last year he died. So when I went to Patna to see him, he was not there, his wife was there. I told Madaji, but for your husband, Jai Bhim is not a film at all. Jai Bhim would not have come to the screen. It is because of him that we were able to good orders. I emphasize in history, individuals do not play a big role, but they do matter. An individual can do certain things which otherwise would not have happened. And Misra did play a true role of a judge, and he is also a true hero in this film. You will see his action in the film in the number 3 court hall, which is the biggest court hall in Madras High Court, that was recreated with much expenditure. And we had a judge similar to Misra in the film. But if you see Surya arguing, you will see in the backside there is a picture, a portrait. That portrait will contain the picture of Justice V.R. Krishnaiyer, who was the greatest defender of human rights in the Indian judiciary. Justice V.R. Krishnaiyer was not a Madras High Court judge. But when the set was being created, I told them, he is my mentor, his picture should be there. Whether it is factually correct or not, the art director accommodated me and put the picture of Justice Misra. Whenever you see Surya arguing, you can see Krishnaiyer throwing light from backside. Why Krishnaiyer? Where did Krishnaiyer learn this law? Krishnaiyer was a lawyer in Madras Law College, and then when Kerala formed, he became an MLA from Kerala, from North Malabar. He became a minister in the first communist government in 1957, along with Justice E.M.S. Namboodiripad. And he became a police minister, he became a law minister, and then he was able to see that how to check the police, how to reform the prison. After several years, he became a judge of the Kerala High Court. Later, he was elevated to Supreme Court, and you must read more about Justice Krishnaiyer, who became a champion of the working class, a champion of human rights, a champion of gender justice. All this he could do as a judge in the Supreme Court. And therefore, he being my mentor, his picture was there in the film on my request. And it is these people who changed the face of the Indian judiciary. Indian judiciary was going in its own way. There are some sparkles at the time when Krishnaiyer became a judge of the Supreme Court. For the first time, he found the prisoners, the under trials, must have some right. They are not something to be dealt with like a chattel. They are human beings. They are covered by the Constitution, and Constitution does provide certain relief for the people. And therefore, he has written many orders by which the prisoners, the under trials, the people who are remanded to custody, they were all given certain basic human rights by Justice Krishna Iyer, and therefore Krishna Iyer also appears in this film. He gave the report to the court. The court found Perumal Swamy was murdered by the police. In the lockup, they have a specialization in torturing people, not a brutal animal treatment. The police have got specialized method of torture. In fact, in the last 1 century, they have invented 120 forms of torture. The communists in this country knew how police can torture you. Without getting your blood out, they can cause injuries to you. And after his death, the only mistake the police did was his 2 nephews were allowed to be there and witnessing all this. After Raja Kannan did not breathe, lying without any movement, how to find out he is dead? They are not doctors to find pulse and find out no, he is no more. Sometimes doctors used to put a torch on your eyelid and then see whether any movement of your pupil, and then they'll say he's dead. Doctors have been a trained mind how to see a man is dead or alive. But what the policeman will do, they went to a shop nearby, got chili powder, brought it, put it in the eyes of Raja Kannan, and when the pupil was not moving, they said he's finished off. Then what to do with these 2 other fellows who was his nephews? Then they told them that if you are going to be seen in this place anymore, if you are going to talk to any more about what happened, you will also have the same fate of your uncle. Just run off. So those 2 people, fearing for their life, ran off to Kerala, working in some village as a domestic help, not even telling their relatives where they are living. So when the case of Sengeni was filed, we don't have proof. Police were saying they escaped from the lockup. But who escaped from lockup? Raja Kannan body was disposed of by the police in a neighboring district, so that district police will dispose of the body as a hit and run case. So they disposed it of. Now these 2 nephews' address are not there. So when you go to court, you will have to prove the case. It is not they will come and prove your case. You got to prove the case. And therefore we started an investigation how to find out where they are. In some strange, they sent a money order to the mother. The money order acknowledgement contained the district name. So we went to Kerala, we went to the district, we went to some trade union office. We told them there are 2 Tamil boys who are working in some village. That district has got at least 300 villages. So the trade union had people all over. So they were searching, who is the Tamil boys who are working in this place? Village after village were searched, and finally we found them in one village. We went and talked to them that your evidence is more important to bring the truth of your uncle's death, to bring justice. So we brought them to Chennai. I put them in my office, took their statement and showed it to Justice Misra. They were eyewitnesses to the incident, and that changed the complexion of the case. When Justice Misra read the report, he told the Advocate General, this is a classic case of murder. We will not spare anybody. That is how the investigation team was appointed. And later, after giving compensation and outside, the Sessions Court in Kadalur was asked to investigate and conduct trial. The trial took 10 years. 2004, all the policemen were convicted for a life sentence, all the 4 of them. That's the first time policemen got life sentence for killing a person inside the lockup. There's a new history being created through court forums. This is how it is not an ordinary crime thriller, but yes, a place where an ordinary tribal woman was able to establish her right and convict the policemen who were hitherto been non-accountable, who hitherto been never questioned by court, who hitherto been conducting so many tortures and escaping. First time the long arm of law caught them red-handed and then punished them. They filed an appeal in the High Court. High Court also dismissed their appeal. They went through the full sentence and 1 person died during the prison term. The 3 others, after completing their 14 years of jail, they are out now. That is a different story. What is most important is, during the trial, the special public prosecutor house was attacked. His library was burned. His car was burned. We went to the court again for police protection for a special public prosecutor, and that was granted. We went to the court for granting compensation to the lawyer who lost his precious properties. That was granted by the court. That was several incidents which may not be shown in the film. The real life looks more hard. The real life looks more torturous than the film life. Many people ask me, is it not so complicated torture that you are showing? Is it not so violent? Are not our sensibilities affected? I said what is shown is only 10%. What is happening outside is much bigger than what is shown in the film. The film, essentially, before shown in public, will have to go to the censor board. The government controls the censor board. Today, all censor board panels are packed with BJP, RSS people, and they will see to it nothing is said about the government. So after passing the censor, you are only seeing 10%. What is really happening is much higher. As a judge in the High Court, I have seen much worse tortures in my court. And therefore, this is not something new. But what is important in this case is the process of law was set in motion by a tribal woman who doesn't know anything about court, anything about case, anything about criminal trial, anything about convicting police. But she was able to withstand the pressure of the police and finally book all the criminals. And that is how the Jaivi became a full story. When the story was over, it came to court in 1993. The judgment was given in 94. In 95 and 96, I wrote about this story in some Tamil magazine, some weekly magazine. They asked me, what is a memorable case you conducted? I wrote the story of Sangeni in those magazines. People don't read much nowadays, print media. If they've read, I would have been a J.B.M. Chandru in 94, not in 2021. But the story had to wait for 25 years. After my retirement, I went for a book fair in Neyveli, which is a lignite town in central Tamil Nadu. This director, Gnanavel, who's my long-standing friend, who was a journalist, who covered my court in High Court several times. So he accompanied me for the book fair. When I was going to the book fair, I showed him, this is the village in which Sangeni is coming. This is the police station where Raja Khan was killed. This is the district border where the body was disposed of. So he took some interest. He has already taken one film, did not run much longer. It's about a schoolboy who's very average in class, but became a successful social activist. It's called Kootathil Oruvan. That film did not run, but it had a social theme. Every film doesn't run merely because it has got a good theme. It also has to require an audience. So he was interested in the story. So he wanted to know step by details. He wanted to have documents. We got the documents and given to him. Then he wrote the screenplay. Then a film was heavy amount. Who will finance the film? His close friend was Surya. He was working with them in several social areas. So Surya said, our production company will finance this film. Thereafter, Gnanavel wrote the full script and then read it out to Surya. Surya was interested. He said, if there is nobody else, I will act like a lawyer, Chandru, in this film. So the lawyer Chandru was introduced as an additional factor for the film. Otherwise, it would have been just a crime thriller. There is a beating, somebody investigates, and the court punishes. It ends as a crime thriller. But Gnanavel is a social activist. He believes art for social sake, not for art's sake. And film is the highest form of art. It involves the involvement of hundreds of people to work to produce a film. Therefore, when Surya was acting and also the company was financing, it became a big budget film. And apart from the story of Raja Khan and Sangeni, it also brought some portions of life. Originally, they wanted to take a documentary on me and attach it with the film. I said nothing doing. There is nothing to do with this film. Film must be shown as a film. Then Gnanavelu thought, why only talk about Raja Khan? Why only talk about Sangeni? The whole Yerula community is being put under greatest repression by the state. There have been hundreds of false cases. It is not the first case, it's not the last case. Therefore, they wanted to expand the canvas of the film, and that is how you will find the life of Yerulas. The life of Yerulas, who are Adivasis in Tamil Nadu, who were once upon a time in the hill and they came to the plains and their life got slowly changed. But nevertheless, their basic qualities did not change. This film is essentially a film to show the self-respect of the people. At no point of time they have compromised themselves. And they live a life of nature. How? The rat takes the grains of the farmer, not one or two. The statistics show 25% of the grains are taken by the rodents. So the farmers want somebody to catch the rice. There are already snakes to catch the rats. But we kill the snake and worship the snake in the form of Nagaraja, Nagamma, and several things. We don't believe in nature. We believe in a false culture. But these people believe in nature. They don't kill snakes. They think snake is a friend of the people, friend of the ecology. And the snake catch rat. Rat eats grain. What is the grain that they are getting? They are not covered by public distribution system. When they are asked to catch the rats, they will also take the grains which are stored by the rat. Not a small quantity. Each rat can take about quarter kilo, 250 grams of grain underneath. So when they catch a rat, they also eat the rat. High protein value. They have grain. That is how they make a living. Their life is more oriented towards nature. And that is how whenever they catch a snake, they leave it in the forest. They don't kill the snake. But we kill the snake. That rice mill owner calls him only to kill the snake only. But he doesn't kill them. That is how they want to show the life of Adivasis. Many of us are not exposed to their life. After this film, many youngsters wrote to me saying we are feeling guilty that we do not know such people are living amongst us. We don't need to go to Andamar and Nicobar to find out the tribals. The tribals are also living among us. But we don't know them. We don't know how they are eating. We don't know where they are living. We don't know what kind of culture they are having. Do they sing song? Do they marry? Do they procreate? All that we do not know. They are excluded society. In fact, once Mahatma Gandhi said, India lives in villages. Dr. Ambedkar asked him simple question, which village, sir, Babu? Gandhi doesn't know. He thought there's only one village. Gandhi knows untouchability. Gandhi knows Harijans. But he could not expect this question at him. And Dr. Ambedkar said, India has got two villages. One, the main village. The other one is a colony or the chain that we call in our language that contains scheduled caste people. When this director went for outdoor shooting, we went to the colony, asked the scheduled caste people, where are these Irula tribes? They showed some other place. No roads, no access to any civilization. They are living in some isolated corner. So Gnanavelu told the press, India lives in three villages. One is the main village, other one is scheduled caste colony, other one is a tribal village. So we are exposed to a new situation. Like us, many city people, many youngsters, they told me, we feel guilty, we have not seen this film. We feel guilty, before this film we did not know people are living a lifestyle like this. And then they said, not only we feel guilty, we want to do something for these people. Not charity, not throwing arms. They want to do something to help these people who have been excluded to be included back in the society. To be part of India, that is a socialist, sovereign, democratic, secular republic. We call our constitution as a sovereign, democratic, secular, socialist republic. They are not part of this republic. They are living somewhere else. Nothing has gone to them. They are not in the voter list. They are not in the Aadhaar card. They are not having any public distribution system. During pandemic period, during Corona period, the free distribution of rice never reached them. How are they living? They were living out of rats. When I asked them, they said it has got more protein than what you are eating rice. The children were also a little healthier. And that is how this film was made into a broader canvas, not a story of one man and a woman fighting for the husband's whereabouts. It is made as a bigger story where the life of the Irula people have been recorded truthfully for the people who are seeing the film. Therefore, the greatest success of this film was it shows a broad life of a tribal people who are not exposed to us. Then what do these people face from the government? Government doesn't extend any of these schemes. Government treats them as untouchables, somewhere away from the society. But what the government does is more important. The government treats them as criminals. Government treats the tribe as a criminal tribes. When did it start? 150 years ago, when the British were ruling, they could not control India with the limited police which they are having. So they invented a new act called Criminal Tribes Act. Some tribes will be declared as criminals. All the 16-year-old male in the tribe will have to register in the police station. Their fingerprints will be recorded in the police station. If any crime takes place in a police station, there will be tom-tom. Within 24 hours, all eligible males should be surrendered in the police station. And if a person who does not surrender, he is a criminal. What a way to find out the criminal. Man may be gone somewhere else, looking out for a living. If he doesn't come, he is a criminal. And if he is caught, the inspector will give whatever punishment he thinks fit. Whatever punishment. So police stations are courts, inspectors are judges, and these people are eternally criminals. That is why in this film you will see from the Kadalur jail, people will come out. Then the inspector will be watching them. One fellow will come. What are you? I am Odda, stand there. What are you? I am Mudaliar, go that side. What are you? You are Korava, stand here. You are Chettiar, this side. What are you? You are Irula, stand here. Why were they caste-wise segregation? Because these are all declared criminal tribes during the British time. When Congress Party and Communist Party were demanding that this act should go, the most draconian act, the act which is violating any kind of human right, and the British never wanted to withdraw the act. And later in independent India, this act was withdrawn. They are called as a denotified tribes, DNT. But DNT does not go well with the police. Police still think they are crimes, they are criminals. So in any village, there's a crime. They will first look out for who are all the members of the former ex-criminal tribes, who are all the DNTs. So in this village, when there is a theft, they are looking for a Korava, who is a Raja Kannu, who is the only Korava family in this village. Even today in police record, when they write Raja Kannu, they will put KR before the name. That is not his initial. It means Korava. IR, it is Irula. So that is how they keep a caste profile of a conviction of a criminals. That is how they even now say, you catch hold of some DNT, make them to agree to the crime, you share the booty of the stolen materials, and then make them to agree to this crime. Crime is resolved, their pockets are full, everybody is happy. And who's unhappy? It is these people. It is these people who have got nobody to care for. Therefore, the director thought, we will also show how the ex-criminal tribes are now being treated in the independent India. That is the first scene, and there is also a scene where Prakash Raj will go to inquire. Prakash Raj will justify beating the criminals in the police station, and he is told, you see, ask these people. Tell me one small boy. What is a small boy do? Small boy can't be arrested in any crime. But then he tells the Inspector General, I will not go to school. Why? If anybody stolen rubber, they will say, this is a fellow who is a Irula boy, he must have stolen it. Therefore, I will be continuously called as a thief. Notwithstanding, the law does not call me. The Constitution gives me equal status, but the society doesn't give me that status. There is a lot of difference between the law and the practice. What is the written law and the theoretical practice and the practice in the society? And this film brings out that theme, that we have kept these people who are also known for their self-respect, but we call them as thieves, we call them as criminals, and then continue to call them, and police treat them like that. We come to this IPS Academy in Hyderabad. We tell the IPS officers, your mindset must change. They are no longer crimes, and no community as a whole can be a criminal. If a community as a criminal can write beautiful Ramayana, Valmiki is known to be a dacoit, and we still have Rama and Ram Janmabhoomi, everything we are having one text, one Purana. And then how do you treat the whole community as criminals? Has any one of you ever thought of these issues? That why is that a whole community is treated as criminals? And what right you have to treat them as criminals? And this film questions that basis. This film finds an answer. It is not one Raja Kannu judgment. Surya goes and tells Sengeni, this judgment is not for you. This is more Raja Kannu should not be brought to police station. But he knows police will not behave. Therefore, these people organize themselves into an organization. There is a Yurula Protection Society. They take the banner, they take a placard, they go to the streets led by the leftist leaders. That is also not left out. People are led by the leftist movement in this country for a path which will give them a true liberation, which will give them true independence in this country, which will treat human being as human being and not as animals and the human beings. It is in that way the film became successful, not because of the story of the two individuals, not because of the success of the lawyer, but because of a whole lot of people, how they live, how they eat, how they face repression, and what is the solution that they have. That solution also mentioned in this film. When you have an organization, when you have a banner, when you have placard, when you take to streets, will it end the problem? How does one liberate himself? How does one individual emancipate himself? It's by literacy. It is a literacy which can emancipate individual. In fact, Supreme Court said, Article 21 talks about liberty. Liberty does not mean life, animal existence. Liberty means dignified living. How does dignified living come? It is through literacy. Even before the Constitution was amended, the Supreme Court said Article 21 guarantees right to education. In this film, you will see the tribal woman coming and putting her thumb impression in the court papers. She is an unlettered person. She doesn't know ABCD or any other alphabet. She puts her impression. That is what many people in this country do when they come to court. But her daughter Ali, in the end, will be reading a newspaper, sitting in the lawyer's house very comfortably. The lawyer is always moody lawyer like me. For once, the lawyer will have a smile, and when she reads the newspaper, that message, Dr. Ambedkar said, learn, educate, and agitate. It is the last frame that became viral in this country. I went to Kannur in Kerala on 2nd of this month. I found CPM party posters having this girl reading a newspaper. It is no longer a film. It has been translated into action. That we need more allies to read newspapers. That is the only way of liberating them, whether it is scheduled caste or Adivasis. And this is the way that the film has become successful. It showed them the way of forming an organization. It showed them the message that it is literacy which can liberate you, not any individual. And this combination, this right combination became Jai Bhim as a successful story, taking this film to 142 countries, taking this film Kanyakumari to Kashmir, and you and me are meeting. It is because of this film, and that is a wonder that this film has done in this world. We see this film in OTT platform, 2 hours, 40 minutes, gripping. Some people are crying, some people are emotional, some people are angry. But then, who is the enemy that you see from this film? Is it one sub-inspector Gurumurthy, or the rice mill owner, or the system, or the unseen state which is behind? Yesterday, when I went to Hyderabad Central University, one professor said he saw the film 10 times. You see the film and sympathize with the film, problems will be solved. Who are these enemies that we are trying to say? Yesterday, we had 2 programs. Both were cancelled. One was organized by a district judiciary, where I was supposed to speak for the lawyers and paralegal persons about public interest litigation. How I fought this case and how the lawyers should take up such cases. That meeting was organized thanks to Parsardi. On 8th, the district judge wrote to me, we have arranged in a big auditorium. Our people are all looking for you. There will be 2,000 people. On 16th, I get a 2-line letter. The program is cancelled. For what reason? Now you have Sundaraya, Vijnan Kendra. No police can stop meetings. Parties arrange such a big hall. We are not disturbed. Yesterday, the boys in Hindu, the Hyderabad Central University, arranged a meeting on this Jai Bhim. The place was given by the university management. At 4 o'clock, they are told permission cancelled. Why? Who is the enemy? Who is the enemy in the first incident? Who is the enemy in the second incident? There are more enemies, not just Gurumurtis, not just rice mill owners. There is what is called the state. The state is a violent machine. That is what Lenin says. State is a violent machine. It can suppress anybody at any time. We have bigger enemies to fight, not just this film. Seeing 10 times or 5 times, it doesn't help. It is bigger than that. We have enemies. Now, this lady is fighting courageously. Everybody is very appreciative. But how many of us are courageous? We have a case in Tamil Nadu where there are 7 lakh government employees and teachers. They formed association. There are a number of organizations, at least 73 organizations. They are coming under one federation, JATO Geo, the massive federation of government employees and teachers. They went on a day's strike, and Jayalalitha Garu, our chief minister in 2002, dismissed all of them. 200,000 people were dismissed in one day under the Essential Services Act. That case was argued in court. I was arguing for those people. It is not as if they are monthly earners. They are getting a lot of concession from government. They are holding powerful posts. Their organizations are 100-year-old, 70 years old. They have lawyers to defend. But when this case was being argued for 2 weeks, day and night, because sometimes the court will sit till 7 o'clock, thousands of government employees will be present in the court campus. Hundreds of school teachers used to be present. On the last day, I remember on 2nd July 2002, this ordinance was passed. I think by 11th July, the judgment came at 7 o'clock in the night. The entire High Court campus was full of government employees, school teachers, waiting for what judgment is going to say. And the judgment went against them. The court dismissed. We are not entertaining this case. I do not know how to convince all these people. There were many women who cried because the case is lost. They were hopeful that at least the court will give them the verdict. When Jayalalitha is against them, at least we can have court. But they did not realize the court and Jayalalitha will be speaking in the same voice. And we lost the case. And there were 50 television cameras, 25 newspaper reporters waiting to record my statement. Why we lost, what we are going to do. So we have a back gate for the High Court, backside. So I went through the backside. I went to my office. I was also frustrated because arguing for 1 week continuously, thinking that we have got a good case, that in one signature, one chief minister can dismiss 200,000 people. Not ordinary people, people with means, people with property, people who got lawyers to argue. Hundreds of lawyers are there for them, for each organization. And we lost the case. We can lose the case, nothing is lost. We can go to higher court. That is what we thought. One press reporter somehow caught me in my landline. Sir, what are you going to do in this case? I, as usual, said we are going to the Supreme Court. I didn't ask anybody. I simply said, when a case is lost, we go to the next higher court. Many times you will hear people saying, we'll go to the next court. I also said we'll go to the next court. Waiting for 10 days, nobody came to file appeal. 200,000 people dismissed. Not one person is willing to file appeal. Don't think that everybody is courageous like saying that we lack courage. We do not have the fighting spirit to fight back. And then how the case was filed? There was a Marxist MP, Mr. T.K. Rangarajan, who was a central committee member of the CPM. In his name, we filed appeal. So now you can see in law reports, T.K. Rangarajan versus State of Tamil Nadu. The judges in Supreme Court asked me, how is that 700,000 people are affected? Not one government employee is filing. What is T.K. Rangarajan got to do with this case? Sir, that nobody is willing to sign papers. At least here this lady put her thumb impression. But people who are educated, people who are all double graduate, they are not willing to fight because the fear was gripping them. That Jayalalitha can dismiss 200, then other 5 lakhs also will be dismissed. They didn't realize that when you are fighting against the government, that the fight is not one day or one evening it will be over. It is not like a cinema of 2 hours and 40 minutes and that way everybody is happy that we saw a good film. It is something perpetuating. It is something eternal. So we told the judge that not one of these 200,000 people are coming. They are afraid to sign the court paper, afraid to get themselves isolated, afraid to be identified by the chief minister. They didn't come. They said, the judges said, we are surprised that out of 200,000, one could not come. Finally, they entertained the case. They said the government servant cannot go on strike. That is how the court said. At the same time, the court also said that you can't dismiss people for 1 day strike. They will appoint 3 High Court judges, retired judges. They will scrutinize. If it is only allegation is strike, they will be taken back. If there are any violent incident, they will not be taken back. So a committee was formed. Slowly everybody came in. The next government came and said, we'll give you the arrears, we'll give you pay fixation, we'll change the punishment. All that has happened. But one question, why is that when 200 people who get the best of this education in this country, who get the best of the government revenue, could not fight back one government? Same thing happened in this state. When transport workers are on strike, what did Chandrasekhar Rao do? Dismiss them. He did not merely dismiss them. He said, we will run the government without transport. Drivers, conductors, how long you will run? How long you will run? There was a time in Madras, they brought police drivers. They don't know how to drive a vehicle because they lost driving a bus. There were many accidents. They could not break the strike. But here the strike could be broken. People went back with begging hands. What did he do? I will not talk to the union. I will talk directly to the workers. They are not your nieces and nephews. You can't be directly talking to them. There are unions in this country, even during British days. The Trade Union Act was enacted in 1926. We are going to celebrate 100 years of Trade Union Act. The British tolerated unions. Why not Chandrasekhar Rao tolerate unions? What is a crime that they have committed? How long will be holding talks on the work committee, depot committee? How long will talk? He must know one thing. The working class in this country never failed. It got independence to this country. It got many victories to this country. The working class in this country born with politics. They did not strike for their economic demand. They fought for independence. They fought for freedom. And therefore, it will not take long time for Chandrasekhar Rao to defeat it in a democratic election. We are not afraid. This is the lesson. The lesson that you draw from Jai Bhim is the guts of that one singing. That we will stand up against all repression. We will stand up against all attacks. We are not going to be cowed down by your threat. The state, which is unspecified phase it has got its own mechanism to work, but we should understand the basic concept of state. That our unity, the unity with the Adivasis, the unity with the Girijan masses, it is the Moolwasi, it is the scheduled caste people who are excluded from the society, it is the backward class people, it is the oppressed people, it is the working class and peasants of this country. If stand united, there won't be any Chandrasekhar Rao, there won't be any Jayalalitha. Thank you. Corona time made people to work from home, and I have no work from home. Therefore, I wrote my biography, which is shortly to be released in the month of January, but it is going to be in my mother tongue, Tamil. I think it will be translated in English very shortly, and you will be getting that also.